Hello, my name is Kyle Constant. I am the current chair of the Missouri Evergreen Reports Committee. This video is going to be a demonstration of how to run reports in Missouri Evergreen. This is part of a series of training videos that we have created on running reports in Missouri Evergreen. To find the rest of these videos, go to moevergreenlibraries.org, come over to the navigation menu that says Member Resources, and find Reports Training Materials. Those will be listed here. They can be played directly in this page. So, as part of this series, it is highly recommended that you watch the video on cloning report templates before you watch this video. Cloning is something that we highly recommend that you do as you are running reports in Missouri Evergreen, and I go over in a little bit of detail why that is, why we recommend it, and how to easily do it. I will demonstrate very quickly in this video how to do it, but if you need more details, it is explored a little bit more in that video. Okay, so in order to run a template, you will need to first find the template that you're wanting to run, the template that will suit your purposes. In this case, I'm going to demonstrate how we would look in our regular or our general ME reports folder and find a circulation count report. This is one of the more common folders that people are going to be using as they're running their monthly statistics and things like that. So I'll show you how this works with one of these. So I'm just going to grab this daily circ count report, and I am going to come up here. I'm not going to run it out of this folder. I'm going to clone it and click Submit. And then I'm just going to throw it into this example folder that I'm going to be using for the purposes of this video. So once I've selected that, in this case, I'm actually not going to change anything about the template itself. At this step in the process, you could, and the other video I mentioned before will show you how. In this case, I'm just going to save it. So it will show up with that title in the folder that I just chose. So I go into My Folders, into the example folder, which is where I chose to save it, and there is the template that I just cloned. So I'm going to check the box next to it, and this time, since it's in My Folders, rather than cloning it again, I'm just going to create a new report from the selected template. And I'm going to click Submit. If any part of this process, as far as the terminology, templates, reports, and output, any of that is unfamiliar, again, I would encourage you to go back and watch some of the other training videos where I go into a little bit more detail about why we use the term template versus report versus output. Okay, so this is a daily circ count report, and you can see it's saved some of my other titles. So I'm just going to say daily circ count example 2 so that it's a unique name. I can add a description here if I want. If I want to remind myself later, this is going to be particularly important if you don't plan on looking at your output right away, or if you think you're going to have to come back to it for a while, then that might be important to put a description in for this particular report. If not, that may not be that critical. The next little row here shows you what report columns are going to be displayed. This is going to be the more important step whenever you are selecting a template rather than when you're running. When you're running, it just the fields are what they are. You can't actually change them from here. You would have to change them in a clone. Under pivot label and pivot data, these are options that if you are a little bit more familiar with using the data output in Excel or in another spreadsheet program, you could choose a different pivot label or a different pivot data if that's something that you're comfortable with. To be honest with you, it's not something that I'm super familiar with, and I generally just leave them at their defaults and manipulate the data in Excel whenever this output is presented and go from there. So I usually leave these alone. In most cases, you are going to be fine by doing that. In the next row, you have to select a folder that you want to save the report definition. So the report definition, again, I go into this in a little bit more detail in another video, but that is just the set of criteria that you're creating right now. This is the report definition. And so you're choosing a folder that you want to save it in, and this is going to be within this reports folder right over here. So within that, I also have an example folder. So I'm going to choose that one. Again, another good thing that's discussed in another video is folder management, and you can see I have it mirrored. I have example in all three of my main folders: template, reports, and output. So I'm going to select example again. That makes it really easy for me to find all of this later on. So now I would go down to this column, or excuse me, this row that allows me to fill in my filters. So the first filter is going to be checkout and renewal library in this case. All filters in Evergreen are going to operate a little bit differently, so it's hard to give generalized advice on how to configure individual filters. That's something more to do on a case-by-case basis, and people from the reports committee or other libraries will be happy to do that if you're having issues with a particular filter or are having trouble getting a report to give you data that is useful. But in this case, there's just a list of possible libraries, and I'm just going to select all of Trail's branches and then click Add. All I did was hold Shift and click the top one, hold Shift, click the bottom one, and that selects the entire row or column of libraries, and then I click Add. So that's how I did that. Then the next filter is a date filter. This is going to be a fairly common thing on a lot of our report templates. So if in this case I'm wanting a daily circ count for a given time span, let's say I want to do all of November of 2020, I want to know every day how many items circed from each of these branches each of those given days, then I would select the 1st of November as my first date and the last day of November as my last date, and it will give me every day in between. So again, these will vary widely from template to template based on what the template is designed to provide. This next row is about output options. So there are a variety of things that you can do with the types of output that you're getting. You can unselect any one of these if you don't need or want those. By default, the Excel output, the HTML output, and bar charts are all selected. What I will tell you is that if you are doing a list report, so what I mean by list is if you are using our templates, our shared templates, and you go into one of these folders that says lists, you're going to be getting a report output that is designed to be a list of items or a list of patrons or a list of transactions, whatever that list may be, but it is considered a list and not a count. Those tend to have many more rows, and often each row is an individual item, patron, or transaction, or what have you. So bar charts tend to be basically useless in those scenarios. So so I often recommend that people uncheck that box there. The main reason there is that if you are running, let's say for example you run a weed list. If you ran a weed list and left bar chart checked, a bar chart for a weed list is going to be absolutely useless. But if you leave that checked, Evergreen will still try to make one, and that will actually take quite a bit of computing power and some time for the server to try to make that. And in the end, it's making something that you're not going to use anyway. You're probably going to be using the Excel or the HTML output. So that would be one recommendation that I would make, is if you're going to do a list, to uncheck the bar charts. The next couple of rows are for recurring reports. I'm going to make a separate video for creating recurring reports, so feel free to watch that one if you want a little bit more detail. But these few rows here are where you would select or where you would configure a recurring report. And then finally, you select a folder to store your output. Once you have filled in all of these fields and selected the folders where you want to save everything, you click Save Report, and you'll get a small box that says Action Succeeded. Click OK. You are not immediately taken to where your output will eventually be stored, so you have to go there manually. If you go to your output folder and go to the folder, the subfolder within output where it currently resides, then you will find the output. If you check the box and in the drop-down menu up at the top, select View Report Output and click Submit, you will then see your output. Remember, I chose to not have it display a bar chart. Oftentimes this is where you would see that bar chart if I did ask it to present it, but I can choose tabular output. Tabular output is useful in some circumstances, and you can in fact sort things by selecting these two header rows here. You can also go back to your output index if you want to save Excel output. And I am also going to be creating another video to show this step of the process in a little bit more detail, because we are currently in the process of setting report output retention limits, and this will be something that a lot of people will need to know how to do. So I'm going to create a separate video for that, and that will be where you can see a little bit more detail about how to save and keep track of those Excel output files. But in a nutshell, the report is run. I can come back here and view my output at any time. If I want to review that actual report definition, I would come into Reports, select Example, and you can see this is the report definition. If at any point I simply want to view it, I can click View, and you can see all of the options that I selected. This is how I got the output that is in the output folder. It will show you everything that you selected for this particular report definition. If, by contrast, I want to edit it, there's also the option to do that. So I can come in and actually edit these things. If, for instance, you run a report and you don't quite get the data that you expected, you can come back in, edit it, and add a different name. For instance, instead of 2, add 3, and then save as new. And it will run the report again with all of the same options and all of the same criteria that you have created. Again, this is good for running reports again that maybe you want to make just one small change. I want to go all the way back to the beginning of October, for instance, to get 2 months worth of daily cert count rather than just the one. Just as an idea. But that is how you run reports in Missouri Evergreen. So again, there are more details about other options. I would encourage you to go look at those videos and get a little bit more detail about some of those other functions of the report tool. But I hope that this video was informative, and I thank you for watching.